TFA fam, welcome back in. It is Sunday night at halftime, which means it is time for the look ahead at week 4 waivers. Chiefs are on. That's obviously Kev's team, so we're not going to waste any time here. Kev, let's just dive right into it, man. Let's talk about the streaming options at quarterback for week 4.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There's not like really sexy names or anything this week. Like I felt like there was a little bit more better last week, but I do think Sam Darnold is easily probably the best option. 29% roster. I feel like I talked about him every single week, and we continue to do that. And he continues to crush. He threw 4 touchdowns today, so he had completed 17 passes for 181 yards and 23 fantasy points, and he has now posted 2 straight weeks of 20 plus, and he's really almost 3 straight weeks of 20 plus fantasy points on the season. He's now thrown 8 touchdowns, only two interceptions. Now they will take on a Packers team who's got a pretty good defense themselves, but still this scheme, how well this team has continued to do them. They've played good defenses already, and Sam Darnold has continued to play really, really well, despite not having T.J. Hawkinson, despite not having Jordan Addison. He continues to play well. So Sam Darnold definitely is an option you can look at. And the next up, now he hasn't played next. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence plays on Monday Night Football, plays tonight. Whenever you're watching this, but the Texans have not been great. Obviously, the Texans have not been great against the pass this season. It's just they got torched by Sam Darnold, who we just talked about. But Lawrence has also been pretty bad. Now we'll have to see how he does, on Monday Night Football. But the Texans defense has allowed these 6 most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Their passing defense has not been really good. They've done a pretty good job of getting pressure on quarterbacks, but their secondary has been really bad. And honestly, Derek Stingley has been one of the worst corners so far in the league so far this year. He has been getting torched so far. So we'll see, with this. But I do think Trevor Lawrence, I know a lot of people have dropped him that picked him up. And I know the first 2 weeks he has struggled, but we'll see how he does on Monday Night Football. But still, as far as a streaming option is concerned, this is a good matchup for Trevor Lawrence. Next up is Geno Smith. Now, I would say it was a so-so day against the Dolphins. He did throw for 286 yards and a touchdown, but he did throw 2 interceptions. But he has now thrown for pretty much 290 plus passing yards in back-to-back games. And now it heads to Detroit, take on a Lions defense that has yielded the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So Geno Smith is an option you can look at. Justin Fields is only rostered in 16% of leagues. Fields completed 25 of 32 for 245 yards and a score. He also rushed 6 times, but only for 6 yards. But he did find the end zone on one of those. And he also put up 19 fantasy points. This week, the Steelers will be heading to Indy to take on a Colts defense that has allowed the 12th most fantasy points to quarterback. So Justin Fields, I definitely think you can take a look at. Now, it is a little bit of frustrating just because, they don't necessarily throw the ball a lot. He did throw the ball 32 times today, but still, Justin Fields with his ability to run the ball, I think he always is going to provide you a pretty safe floor. Next up is more of a speculative streaming option, and that is Tyler Huntley versus the Titans. Skylar Thompson left the game against the Seahawks. If he misses, it could be newly acquired Snoop Huntley who takes over as quarterback. And I don't even know if it matters if he's injured, to be honest with you. They acquired him. I do think that he probably provides a better option than what Skylar Thompson is at this point. But if he is hurt, then it just kind of really opens the door. I know that he's only been here for 1 week. But we've kind of seen this before. I mean, last year, Joshua Dobbs did something similar. I think Mike McDaniel could do a good enough job of scheming him things and, making an easy game plan. But he is something that provides quite a bit of rushing upside as well. And that is something we should always be looking for in our fantasy quarterback. So Snoop Huntley, I definitely think, is an option against the Titans. Next up, you have don't feel great about it, but Deshaun Watson, 24%. Watson continues to show some signs of life after a disastrous week 1. Today against the Giants, Watson completed 21 of 37 for nearly 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also rushed 4 times for 26 yards. This week, the Browns head to Vegas to take on a Raiders defense that just got torched by, let me check my notes here. Yep, Andy Dalton for 300 plus yards and multiple scores today. So Deshaun Watson, I think, is somebody you could also look at as well.
Let's keep it moving. Going to jump over to the running back ads for week 4. I did just want to lead off with this. So I feel like I've been doing this for the past 2 weeks. But Ty Chandler, if he's out there, he's probably rostered in your 12-team leagues. But if he's out there in like 10-team leagues, I would look at picking him up. He was right underneath that 50% threshold, but I don't have him on the list here because of that. But kicking things off on the actual list, Bucky Irving, he is available in 65% or more of both ESPN and Yahoo leagues. He has clearly been the better runner over Rachaad White. On the season, Bucky has 6 fewer carries for nearly 90 more yards than Rachaad White. Yes, heard that right. In today's game, also the Bucks were using Irving in creative ways in order to get the ball in his hands, which is an interesting development. Definitely not something in the type of plays we've seen him that we saw him utilized in. Not something we've seen from the Bucks offenses in the past. It's going to be hard to rely on him as an every week starter until he starts to run more routes, though. White still has a stranglehold on that. Today, for instance, he ran 24 routes to only 7 for Bucky Irving. But if he is able to do that, Bucky Irving is going to be one of the best waiver ads of the year. So I'm definitely picking him up. Tyrone Tracy, another rookie, played almost 30% of the snaps this week. That is a career high for him through the first 3 weeks. It was just over 20% in the first 2 weeks. He also had 7 total touches today. Previous high was 3, which came last week. In the few plays I saw from him, definitely thought Tracy looked better than Singletary. And I usually hate this type of analysis, but if you remove Singletary's 43-yard run, his rushing stats would have been 15 attempts for 22 yards. Singletary did come through in the air as well with over 40 yards, but I think it's possible that Tracy continues to see his involvement increase over the next few weeks, which makes him an interesting pickup. Justice Hill, he's available in nearly 90% of both ESPN and Yahoo leagues. I was really surprised by that. Had another solid outing today, 54 total yards on 7 touches. His upside is always going to be capped because he's not someone you're going to bet on to find the end zone often. But in full PPR leagues in particular, he has value and should be scooped up. Samaje Perine, a pretty even split here through the first half of this Chiefs game. He has 9 opportunities to 8 for Carson Steele. Samaje Perine is one who is more widely available. However, he was sitting around 35% on both ESPN and Yahoo in terms of how much he is rostered. For the handcuff plus types of guys, Braylon Allen, really surprised that he is available. He is as widely available as he is. Only rostered in 28% of ESPN leagues, 36% on Yahoo. Saw him have another strong involvement on Thursday night game. Antonio Gibson on the other side of that, followed by Tank Bigsby, Rico Dowdle. Rico is getting close to that 50% threshold. He is clearly the guy who's going to be running routes, especially if the Cowboys are down. We keep seeing Zeke's involvement tick down. So if he's sitting out there for whatever reason, definitely looking to pick him up. Some of the guys who are only on the handcuff range, Trey Benson, Sermon, and Tyler Algier, if you're looking for straight handcuffs. And then for deep ads, Emmanuel Wilson had 85 total yards and a score today, saw 14 opportunities. That was certainly influenced by the Packers controlling this game basically from beginning to end. But we saw Wilson in that week 1 game against the Eagles have some pop. And with Marshawn Lloyd on IR, going to be out for at least another 3 weeks. He's an interesting deep ad. Roschon Johnson is the clear 2-minute passing down back, but he was also the only running back out of the 3 to average more than 3 yards per carry. Some of that, could be attributed to the situations in which he was running. But he also ran 22 routes. That was just 6 fewer than Swift. Nothing has looked great in this backfield. That offensive line is garbage. But Roschon Johnson, widely available and was the only running back, like I said, I thought really looked any good whatsoever. So he's definitely someone interesting to keep an eye on. I'm throwing this one out here, Kev. I don't want you to get too excited, buddy, but Tyler Beatty had himself a nice little stat line here. I will say 9 of his 13 snaps came in the final minutes of the game when that game was out of hand. But neither Javonte or McLaughlin has looked good through the first few weeks. Beatty did have 70 yards on just 9 carries, so he obviously had some explosiveness there to his game. I really don't know what to make of it, but if you're like in a 16-team league or something like that, I think Beatty could be interesting because the usage so far through the first 2 weeks has been really unpredictable for the Broncos. So, I guess it's possible they start to get Beatty more involved, but he's on the deep league ad spectrum only.
Yeah, even if you take away his 43-yard run for Tyler Beatty, he still had more yards than Javonte Williams and Angelo McLaughlin combined, even without that. So, I don't know. It's possible they look to get him more involved and see what he's able to do because the other two certainly haven't been able to do anything. So, I mean, he's worth like a speculative ad. I wouldn't go crazy with it, but yes, he has looked
Right.
far more explosive. But it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, Missouri Tiger looked great. So, yeah. Anyways, let's move over to the wide receivers. And I know people first seeing this graphic are going to wonder, why is Juwan Jennings not number one on this? And we'll talk about it. Because first thing first, all I'm going to say is, holy shit. Jennings went absolutely nuclear, hauling in 11 of 12 targets for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Rams for 46.5 PPR points. This year's been absolutely wild, is all I could say. But Jennings was a good play this week. No one expected this. With saying all of that, I will say Jennings is a good play as long as Kittle and Debo are out. So I would not rush out and use a high waiver ad or heavy fab on Juwan Jennings, because this is only a short term thing. Because once Debo comes back and Kittle comes back, he goes back to being the guy that he is. We might see a couple targets a game, which is crazy because every time, or it feels like almost every single time that Debo Samuel misses, Juwan Jennings goes off. And so, like, this dude is either really good and he's just being buried by the rest of these guys or something, because this has now become a trend. I mean, not this kind of nuclear, but anyways. So I would not want to. That's why I don't have him at number one, because I don't think he's worth a number one waiver ad. He's not worth spending heavy fab on, because once these other guys come back, his role is going to be diminished again. So that's that. Next up, we have Darnell Mooney, who I do have on here, but the Falcons' offense is starting to look better and better. Mooney will continue to be a weekly flex option as he plays 100% of the snaps and will draw the easier matchup of folks going towards Drake London. Last week, Mooney hauled in 3 of 7 for 88 yards and a score. This week, he already has 2 for 35 in the first half against the Chiefs. Mooney should be rostered in far more leagues. And I think as we go by, I mean, he should be rostered in pretty much all leagues at this point, unless we're talking about like 18 leagues. But like anything 10 team and above, really, or 12 team and above, he really should be rostered, because I think he's going to continue to see a decent amount of targets every single week. So next up is Jalen Naylor, somebody that I've talked about for multiple weeks in a row. Rostered still only in 11% of leagues. Naylor's touchdown streak continues as he has now scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. He has now posted double-digit points in 2 straight weeks as well. Though he hasn't seen more than 4 targets in a game, Naylor has been a go-to target inside the red zone for Sam Darnold. So I do like Jalen Naylor as an ad. Next up, we have Jalen Tolbert. Tolbert has now seen 14 targets over the last 2 games, and this week he held in 3 of 5 targets for 42 yards and a score. He has scored double-digit fantasy points in back-to-back games as well, and now he gets a good matchup on Thursday night against the Giants. So Jalen Tolbert should be rostered in more leagues. Allen Lazard, it wasn't a high-volume game for Lazard, where the Jets pretty much manhandled the Patriots for the most of that game, but he still saw 3 targets, and he made the most of them with 3 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. Lazard has now been targeted 16 times this year and has scored double-digit points in 2 of the 3 games. His rapport with Rodgers is going to continue to make him like a weekly flex option as bye weeks get going. Next up is Demario Douglas, rostered 28% of leagues. Douglas finally got involved in the game plan as he was targeted 9 times. He has turned that into 7 catches for 69 yards. This one's tough because the Patriots offense has been absolutely dreadful with Brissett under center. You have to figure that the Pats are going to look to Drake May in the near future, just like they did the fourth quarter on Thursday night, because Jacoby Brissett has just looked awful. I mean, this offense looked awful, and it's not really hard to blame because they don't really have a ton of weapons right now. But Demario Douglas, at least in PPR formats, I do think makes sense. And the same thing goes with Wan'Dale Robinson. Robinson has a low ADOT target. Robinson is the low ADOT target option within this offense, but he doesn't possess a big ceiling. But if he's going to continue to see plenty of underneath targets, then he's worthwhile adding PPR formats. Tutu Atwell, I kind of went back and forth. Should he be in this, or should he be over in kind of the watch list? But Atwell led the Rams in targets today with 5 and brought in 4 of them for 93 yards. With Puka and Cup out on the show for the foreseeable future, we will continue to try to figure out who the leading target is. But Atwell has drawn 9 targets in the last 2 games. It could be a speculative ad. Lastly, some deeper options. Michael Wilson, kind of went back and forth where to put him on this, but Wilson was targeted 9 times today, secured 8 of them for 64 yards. Wilson is only rostered in 12% of leagues, and honestly probably should be more than that. The second-year wide receiver should continue to see his role grow this season. It goes on, and he should be in the mix as a flex option on certain weeks, especially with bye weeks looming. And then Xavier Legette, this is very much a speculative ad for me. The rookie wide receiver did have a huge day, 2 catches, 42 yards, but the Panthers offense definitely looked way better than we've seen at all with Bryce Young. And we have to remember that Dave Canales I think, is actually one of the better, offensive minds in the league. And now I think with Andy Dalton, this offense could actually get back to being a little more functional. We saw today Deontay Johnson, all the hype we had for him heading into the offseason, now we kind of see it's come to fruition with Andy Dalton. Well, Andy Dalton isn't, going to continue throwing 300 yards every single week. We have seen him turn around at the quarterback. We saw it with someone like Geno Smith, had been in the league for a while. We saw it with Baker Mayfield kind of bring his career back around. I wouldn't be. I'm not saying that I think Andy Dalton is going to turn around and be some monster quarterback the rest of the season. I don't think that at all. But I think some of the pass catchers here and some of the weapons can start to be more relevant. And I think that's Xavier Legette, who is a rookie wide receiver, very super explosive once he gets the ball in his hand. Also, should be mentioned that Adam Thielen left that game with what is being called a hamstring injury. So it just kind of opens up more of a target window for some of these other options too. So Xavier Legette is also a really interesting one. Jordan Whittington, it's really tough with the Rams because they really spread the ball around to a ton of players. It wasn't just one player that was really peppered with targets. So that made it a little frustrating. He didn't really see as much of an involvement as I was hoping for. But I do think that he is still a decent option in super deep leagues. And then Jermaine Burton is another player that if I'm in a deeper league, 12 team and above, I think having on my bench, because I do think some better weeks are coming down the stretch from him. They actually started to praise him a lot recently, that he's really starting to turn things around, look a lot better. T. Higgins is expected back, but he could have some sort of like a Tyler Boyd-ish type role, and that is one that is lucrative. So other than that, I think the rest of these guys are just really deeply look ads right now.
Let's wrap things up with tight end. Not a ton here, not a great week for the streaming options. I'm going to lead things off with Cole Kmet. Had a big day today, going 10 for 97 and 1 on 11 targets. It certainly helps that Caleb Williams dropped back 52 times. But the good thing here is that Kmet has seen his snaps increase in the past 2 weeks after Gerald Everett had been mixing in more through weeks 1 and 2. So I think you can look to him in week 4. Noah Fant, finally saw him get on the board, caught all 6 targets for 60 yards, have a matchup with the Lions on deck. The only issue here is that the Seahawks have been spreading the ball around. Pharaoh Brown actually played 2 more snaps than Fant today, but Fant's clearly the top receiving weapon for the Seahawks in terms of their tight ends. He dominated the routes run, but that's still something that just doesn't make you feel great. Theo Johnson is a potential option here, led the way in both total snaps and routes run among the tight ends. Should have had a touchdown near the goal line. Danny Dimes overthrew him, just had no touch on that ball whatsoever. But when it comes to finding streaming tight ends, finding guys who are running routes is half the battle. Theo is doing that. I think also going up against Dallas in week 4 should be a situation where the Giants would be playing from behind as well, which only helps. And then on the topic of the Carolina Panthers, Tommy Tremble, I'm not going to overreact to Dalton's big day, but he was the clear lead tight end in this one, played 64 snaps to just 26 for Jatavion Sanders, ran 30 routes to Sanders 11 as well. So he's someone you could potentially look at. And then the last 2 are kind of just situations I am just paying attention to. Want to see what happens with Mike Gesicki. He's on the streaming radar, but he was splitting time and rotating with 2 other tight ends. We also have T. Higgins coming back in the mix, so I kind of want to see how that looks tomorrow night. And then Brenton Strange, also a situation to monitor for tomorrow with the 2 Monday night games. Matchup against Houston next week, but we're going to need to see what happens with Evan Ingram first and if he's able to come back.
Yeah. So overall, like it wasn't like a terrible week because we didn't have like a bunch of injuries or anything like that. But there also wasn't like it's not a great waiver week. There's not anybody that stands out to me that like, and outside of anybody unusual that I would be like, oh man, you have to use your number 1 waiver ad on this guy or anything like that. Like, I think for a lot of it, I think it's a lot of if you're in fab leagues, putting maybe 5-10%, in terms of things that I'll be looking to do. But yeah.
Speaking, we'll just do this one question, then we'll get out of here. But you were talking about using the top priority Craigslist user. Only have 1 bench spot. Have Hurts, was 2 leading wide receivers are injured. Bye week coming up week 5. Would you use waiver number 2 priority on picking up Darnold, Worthy, Irving, someone else, or save it for the future?
I mean, I think Xavier Worthy is obviously interesting. One that you would, I mean, he'd be kind of under that, like probably not normally available in most leagues. It's been tough with the Chiefs, just the way that they've kind of operated. It's really been Rashee Rice and the scraps left for everybody else. I mean, Travis Kelce's not even involved. I mean, he is now a little bit more in the second half. I think he now has like 4 catches for 30 yards, but it's been pretty much the Rashee Rice show so far. But I mean, maybe him, but like I don't know. I think I would hold it for now. I don't think that they're like any of these guys like really like, oh my, like, you have to. And like for a quarterback, I definitely do it. I get it that Hurts 5 weeks coming up, but I'm definitely not burning a waiver ad on that. And then honestly, if I don't expect AJ Brown to play this week, and maybe Devontae Smith doesn't play either. I mean, I know he suffered, got knocked out of that game, but I always felt like, but they should all be back though in week 6, whenever or after their bye. So at the very least, I would just wait till after waivers run. And honestly, you probably could pick up somebody like I said, like Stu Huntley. I low key like. He is somebody, that, remember, that is Pro Bowler Stu Huntley there.
Get it
So
right.
he
Get it
didn't go to a
right.
Pro Bowl, but he is a more than serviceable backup quarterback. And so I do think that there's a real chance that he could be the starting quarterback this week. So that is something I would do. Nobody's going to run out and pick up him. So I think he'll be all right there. I definitely wouldn't waste it on that. But other than that, that being said, go ahead and get out of here. I hope everybody has a good rest of the week. We'll be back again shortly with a lot more content to get you ready for week 4. This week has been wild. This year has been wild so far. It's been absolutely ridiculous. But I feel like we say that every year, but really, offense has been really bad for the most part this year. It's been absolutely brutal on a week-to-week basis. Outside of like a couple people, like Malik Neighbors has balled the last few weeks, so that's been good to see. But other than that, hope everybody has a good rest of the week, and we'll see you here soon with a lot more content. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.